for this week's journey on the road less traveled with Gary L. and Gigi's Boo. Hello, Gigi's Boo.
Hi, how is everybody?
I couldn't hear you. What'd you say?
I said hello. How is everybody? Is you side-goggling or is you walking straight?
We side-goggling. That's hearing all kinds of beeping. I don't know what that
Yeah, I heard that a while ago, too. I don't know what that is. I thought it was on your end.
No, it's doing it more and more. I don't know what's up with that.
Mm.
Okay. Anyway, hope everybody's well out there. Hello, reallibertymedia.com. Anyone else out there listening on the archive? Let's do something we don't usually do. Let's tell them what day it is. It's the 15th of January, 2017. And unlike Hal, who has a neat way of cataloging his shows, we don't have an archive number, maybe because we probably don't have enough archives to rise to the equivalent of a whole number yet. But anyway, so what have you been up to, Gigi's Boo?
Just piddling along, doing some things that I normally do. We're going to talk about that a little bit later, but doing some things that I normally do.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's going to be somewhat of, I guess, a variety show. We're still trying to figure out what we're going to be when we grow up. So, what can we do?
I don't want to grow up.
Huh?
I don't want to grow up.
All right, Peter Pan.
No, I'm Tinkerbell. You're Peter Pan.
Oh, okay. Peter Pan's something you find under the bed in a sick house. Grimmer says, don't worry about those beeps. It's just a NSA.
Probably right.
And that's good. I hope they listen in. Might actually learn something.
Surely they
Wouldn't
will.
Wouldn't that be a surprise? Yeah. Oh, by the way, Gigi's Boo.
Mm-hmm.
Adrian, a.k.a. Suspect Sky, just released a pretty cool little short video of a Chilean UFO that for some reason the government took since 2014 to analyze the video. So it was done in 2014. It's very interesting. I recommend people take a look and go to YouTube, Suspect Sky, and you'll see a very bizarre set of images taken by a military helicopter. And done in visible light, infrared, and infrared reverse. And you're going to see some interesting things. And so anyway, it's about a 4 or 5 minute video. He's done a good job annotating the video with the background information so you don't have to go back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, take a look at that. I think it'll be fun.
Yeah, he does some good stuff.
Yeah, he does. And let me go ahead and talk about where we are on this multi-series documentary that we're producing. We're pretty much finished the first two editions, first two issues. Probably will be 2 more after those. And we're going to attack pretty much every aspect of what people think is true. And it will kind of encompass the area of what's called fake news. And it'll kind of encompass the area of who we think owns everything. And we might be surprised how that turns out as the research goes. And we'll take it a little bit further, talk about some of the history behind how we got to where we are. But most of all, we're going to talk about the distraction value of all this and possibly what exactly is we're being distracted away from. So all this coming up, not sure exactly. I'll go out on a limb and say we'll probably see the first edition within the next 2 weeks. So it's a lot of research involved, and patching it all together, the editing and so forth is kind of challenging, but we're having fun. And we'll get it out there as soon as we can. Anyway, Gigi's Boo, what's Atticus been eating popcorn?
Yeah, we had a little popcorn. I threw it up in the air. He loves that. He loves the peanut butter dog biscuits that Gary gave him for Christmas. He and I had a little Indian war here a couple of weeks ago. He got a chicken breast bone, and I was trying to take it away from him, and he bit me. Didn't bring the blood, but he bit me. And so it was a test of wheels. I let him alone and spanked him afterwards and told him not to do that. And then it happened again just a couple of days later. And so really a battle. I mean, we really had a battle. He would bite at me and I would just smack him on his rear end. And, it was just like we were going to fight. That's just all the way are. The only thing you could say to it. And I said, oh my God, I'll break you. Because Gary said, you bite her and I'll take you out in the yard and you'll be a dead dog. But I handled it. After he bit at me several times over being mad, I just reached down and grabbed his snout. And when I did, I grabbed his ear and I chewed that ear up. He was just squealing. He couldn't bite me. He was just crying. And I shoved him back. I said, now by God, bite again. I'll get the other ear. So now when I hand him something, I've tested him. If I hand it to him, I might not turn it loose, and he doesn't jerk. He keeps it in his mouth. I take it up, take it back. He doesn't growl, anything. So he had to learn the lesson that I was bigger and I could bite harder. And Gary couldn't believe it. Chewed that ear up. I made a believer out of him.
Y'all just fighting and going on.
I know, but mostly he's a very congenial dog. He loves everybody. He's got people that come by here just to see him. Mm-hmm. And we've got an elderly couple that he jumped in their pond. I know y'all remember me telling you about that when he was a puppy. And he'll go down and want to go to see him. And then he'll bark and they'll throw him a weenie out. And they'll come up by here every once in a while and bring him a weenie or whatever. Don't particularly want him to have them because they're real fattening, but that's his treat from them. Give them a plug, Mr. and Ms. Mize. And they're really, really sweet. And he adores my nieces, my two nieces. He thinks they're the cat's meow, but that's enough about Mr. Long.
Yeah, that's enough about him. He'll be all right. He's a spirited young man. And you brought a quote to mind I'd like to share. A bird sitting on a tree is not afraid of the branch breaking, because his trust is not in the branch, but on its own wings. Mm-hmm. So believe in yourself and win the world.
That's right.
Yeah, so
right.
Sometimes you got to fight the dog.
That's it. Old-fashioned dog fight, as they say.
Okay. Yeah. One of the things I came across, like I say, we're going to be somewhat of an eclectic, even more so, eclectic show tonight. I came across this study as a fast food study that basically focused on the presence of antibiotics in the meat that's served at the restaurants, along with a few other things. So some of the criteria they looked at were whether or not they had a wholesome policy. They used the word good, but I think they want them to use the word wholesome maybe. And they wanted to see that the policy applied to all types of meat that they served. They wanted to look at what the availability of meat products without routine antibiotics. And they looked at the issues of third-party audits, whether or not they post their policies online, if they have responded to surveys, and so forth. So we have a list of restaurants here for those of you who can afford to eat out.
Which we do very little.
Yeah, very little. And so little that I'm like freaked out when we look at a menu because of how expensive things have got. But anyway, number one. Well, actually tied for number one. Chipotle and Panera Bread. And so Chipotle, let's start with them. They ranked 10 out of 10 on the content of their policy. 6 out of 8 on the policy applying to all the meat that they serve. 8 out of 8 on availability of meat products without routine antibiotics. 3 out of 4 on third-party audits. 3 out of 3 on posting their policies online. 3 out of 3 on responding to surveys. So they scored a total of 33 out of 34 points and a 97% total, which they shared also with Panera Bread. Now, coming a distant third, I like to see people's eyes spinning around trying to guess which one comes in next. Chick-fil-A. And they came in at a 78% bracket. 25 out of 32 points. Dunkin' Donuts, number 4, 67%. Our good friend McDonald's comes in, number 5 at 59%. Subway. A lot of people think Subway is the thing, but they're only 42% on this scale. Wendy's drops the ranking to 25%, Burger King to 9%, Denny's to 8%, Domino's to 9%. I guess switched around somehow. Starbucks, everybody talks about Starbucks, comes in at 3%. Now we have the esteemed list of restaurants that come in at 0%. And that list includes Olive Garden, Papa John's, Taco Bell, Pizza Hut, KFC, Applebee's, Chili's, Jack in the Box, Arby's, Dairy Queen, IHOP, Outback Steakhouse, and Little Caesars. So all you guys out there listening in, if you heard your favorite restaurant, I hope it was at least in the top 3. What do you think about that, Gigi's Boo?
I know it's bad. I knew all along all of it was bad. And one meal, like a fast food meal with a burger, fries, and a Coke, you usually have over 1,800 calories. That's about what an average man should eat a day, 1,800 calories. That's in one meal. So, pretty bad, ain't it?
Yeah, it is bad. And, that was pretty much focused on antibiotics. So I'm sure there are lots of other measures that could be taken, but I doubt it would actually change the outcome very much. All you folks, you go out and eat that crap.
It's poison.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, because
poison in your body.
Because it's my personal opinion that you're intentionally being poisoned.
Yeah.
And I'll take it even a step further. I think you're being poisoned based on your genetic makeup.
Let me say something here, since we're talking about this. Years ago, I remember my great-grandmother cooked. And she'd cook in the morning. She'd have eggs and oatmeal and homemade biscuits and sausage and the whole 9 yards. And they ate it, and she cooked a big dinner for my poopa. And when he came in, they ate, and what they had left over, they had for supper. They lived to a ripe old age, and they didn't go to a gym, but they ate their own cooked food. And they were healthy. They lived a long life. My Lacey lived to be 96 years old. So you see, it's what they're putting in it that's killing it.
Yeah,
it's killing people.
Yeah,
and all these people is joining a gym. Get out and do some hard work. Do some manual labor. People that do manual labor don't have any problems, with needing to go to a gym. So that was just my little extra throw in there.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I think the big thing is, people go to the gym and all that. That's great. But if you're not changing what you eat, all you're possibly accomplishing is that you're going to have a really buff, poisoned body.
Mm-hmm. You remember wasn't too long ago that I came in and I was real sick, and my sister treated me to Starbucks coffee, and oh my God, I thought I was going to die. I mean, it was terrible. I'll never drink coffee from anywhere unless it's brewed at home. I just,
yeah, and
I was a sick chick that day.
Yeah, and we didn't mention the chat room. I'm sorry, or reallibertymedia.com, and the chat room over at Real Liberty Media. So if you're listening in on the website, you might want to just jump in the chat. It's easy to get into. Just you just hit enter, and it'll assign you a random number if you don't want to put a name. But you can put a name too if you want. But like some of the folks say, Grimner says he makes his food at home. And sock puppet says those fast food places generally make me sick. I have to agree with you. I mean, there's been, I don't even know when it was. It's been a while, but I think there was one occasion within the last several years that I actually maybe, I don't even know where it was, one of the fast food places. I get this, like, what used to be a 50-cent 25-cent hamburger. Now it's a 99 or whatever. And I felt like I'd swallowed a brick.
Mm-hmm.
It was like horrible. And it's just, folks are noticing this. Yeah, Sock Puppet says he can make a perfectly fine Egg McMuffin.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, and home fries were always better than fast food. Yeah, you're right. And it has a lot to do with what you're making it, what you're making it out of. So anyway, Gigi's Boo, but interesting topic. But I tell you, we're going to
switch over a little bit.
Let's switch gears a little bit. Let's go back to what people are typically expecting to hear from us, something in the bizarre and unusual, a serious look at the unusual.
Yeah, we kind of scattered around all 3 or 4 days to see what we were going to do, and I always have something in mind, but Gary's mind doesn't always run along with mine, but on this one we were pretty much kind of eye to eye, but I found a couple of interesting stories that I'm going to tell you about the Bachelor's Grove Haunted Cemetery. It's a small 1-acre plot near the Rubo Woods Forest Preserve, southwestern suburb of Midlothian, also famous as one of Chicago's most haunted sites. It's got a long history, about 100 reports, paranormal stuff going on there. It's fenced in. It's got one gate, and it's on the south side, and one single path that goes around the lot. And just outside the lot, there's a stagnant pond. The cemetery's kind of overgrown and unkept now, and they said there had been a lot of frequent vandalisms, and perhaps because of the popularity of the haunting legends. Graves and markers have been defaced and mutilated, and coffins have been disinterred and opened. There's been evidence of animal sacrifices near a lagoon at one quarter of the cemetery, and has pointed to possible occult sites. Now, I don't know how people feel about cemeteries and graves. There's no way that I would tamper with anything like that. That's just something you just don't do. I guess people that are in the occult are not very worried about things like that, but that's something with the Indian culture you don't mess with. The cemetery was first known as Everdon Cemetery, and the first burial was in 1844. We don't know why it's called Baxter's Grove in 1864, but according to one popular story, the name came from unmarried men who were among the first settlers. Perhaps more likely it was derived from a German family that was named Bachelor. During the gangster era of the 20s and 30s, bodies of the victims of the gang warfare were usually dumped in that lagoon. They said that the stories of the haunting phenomena proliferated around 1960. And burials decreased after 1965, and the area became popular as a lover's lane and a gathering spot for youth. Now, let me tell you something. I ain't going to no graveyard to be doing no necking and spooching. If that can be done somewhere else. They said a lot of people really went just to get spooked. And so the youthful vandals also began visiting the cemetery, and they overturned the tombstones and opened graves, and they strew the bones about. The haunting reports reached a peak in about 1970 to 80. The last recorded burial was in 1989. The most often reported apparition at the Bachelor's Cove is a vanishing house or a floating house. It's a 2-story Victorian farmhouse with white picket fence and a columned porch with a swing and a warm light shining within. The house can be seen at a distance and looks really real, but when they approach it, they find that it shrinks in size the closer they get and just disappears. Now, according to legend, anybody who succeeds in reaching it and enters it will never return. And the vanishing house has been widely reported since the 1960s and drawn by numerous witnesses. But there's no historical evidence of the house ever being there. Now, let me say this. On Hulu, I was watching, wait a minute. What was the sequel, Gary, to Twilight Zone? Night Gallery.
Yeah,
Night Gallery. It was Rod Sterling.
Mm-hmm.
And there was, when I read this, there was an episode, there was a blonde-headed guy on there that used to play in one of those old movies, Man from U.N.C.L.E. Anyway, he was supposed to be a psychiatrist, and this one guy kept hearing a woman call him, and he saw this house. And it had a white picket fence around it, near a cemetery, the whole 9 yards. And beautiful woman came out and just started talking to the psychiatrist, and he was really smitten with her. And she told him, she said, please leave, and in the morning come back and say the prayers for the dead. And what they turned out to be, this in this night gallery thing, is they were werewolves, and they came out at night. And when they cloaked the people and coaxed them to come into the house, that's why they never returned. And I really believe that Rod Sterling did this particular one about this house in Bachelor's Grove, because it was so familiar to what I saw and similar to the reports. And it said a number of ghosts of human beings have been reported. And here you go. Of a woman, and they call the White Lady or Madonna of Bachelor Grove. And this is what was in this show that I was talking about. Then it also said that there were some hooded monks, phantom monks, but there's no evidence of ever a monastery being in that area. They said the White Lady carries a baby in her arms and wanders aimlessly through the cemeteries on the night of the full moon. They said that she's a ghost of a woman who is buried there next to the grave of her baby. But again, no historical records can really prove this. Other apparitions are of a 2-headed man, a child, a black carriage, and a glowing man in yellow. Many reports have been made of sightings of ghostly farmer and his horse and plow. That story goes back to the 1870s, that a farmer was plowing land near the pond when the horse unexpectedly bolted into the water and both man and animal were drowned. Now, there's been some phantom vehicles that have been reported on the cemetery's path, and they vanish as people approach them. Some people have reported being in a phantom accident with these so-called cars. Flashing and dancing lights have been reported at the cemetery, especially a blue light that resembles that of a police car. Flashing white lights that have also seen in both daytime and at night, as well as a red light that streaks across the sky over the path and cemetery. They say the lights don't exhibit quite the same behavior as ghost lights, like the Brown Mountain lights and the others that we've read about. And the sightings of the lights were really frequent during the 70s. And in December 1971, a young woman said she succeeded in putting her hand through one of the flashing lights, but felt nothing. Other things that happen to people are like sensation of unusual cold, the awareness of an invisible presence that causes discomfort, and the tactile sensation of a sweaty but invisible hands upon the skin. It's pretty well played out, though, now. One of the cemetery's best known urban legend is the hooked spirit, or the hook. Now I don't think this legend is just predominant up there, because I've heard it all down in the South too. And it goes to a story about a boy takes his girlfriend on a date to the cemetery. Again, anybody that would go to the cemetery on dates needs their head examined, hoping that a spook would scare her. That way he could be a hero and protect her. Instead, the girl felt uncomfortable and she asked to be driven home. He was disappointed, but when he started to take her home, they couldn't. The car wouldn't start. So, one says that the police came and pulled up. She could hear something scratching. And he told her to step out of her car and to walk toward them and not to turn around. And when she got to the police, she did turn around, and her boyfriend was hung with his feet first, and his throat had been cut, and he was kind of moving in the trees, and his fingernails were supposed to be what was scratching. Now, down south, we hear the story of a young couple parked on Lover's Lane, and a man that is supposed to have escaped from a mental institution who has a hook for a hand. And he goes up to the car, and they see him, and they just scream, and they pull off, and they can hear something just still beating on the car. And they almost kill themselves, and when they get in the hand, there's his hook in the car door. So you see, this is kind of from one place to the other, with all that. They've been a lot of people that have tried to catch them on film and other things, but a controversial photo was taken at the cemetery by Marie Huff, a member of the Ghost Research Society, on August the 10th of 1991 during the daytime. Huff was using infrared film to shoot a panorama of the area where the unusual effects had taken place. Her photograph, which remains unexplained, shows a semi-parent girl in an old-fashioned dress sitting on top of a broken tomb. Miss Huff said the girl was not visible to her naked eye when she took that picture. But a lot of people have said that it's been double exposed and maybe, photoshopped or something. But anyway, I found this very, very interesting because it correlated with two things, the hook in this area and also what I saw on Night Gallery. When it described it in this article, I was saying, geez, I saw that on Night Gallery. So really, I found that very interesting.
Yeah.
Did I see it?
Yeah, those kinds of stories I've heard it both ways. So yeah, and it, also makes me wonder how many parents told those stories to their kids in the hopes.
Yeah, everybody's heard of Bloody Mary.
Yeah, in the hopes that they keep them from parking on the highway or along the road or something like that. Well, on that note, there's another little story that's popped up here. Now, there's going to be a moral to this story, but we're going to go ahead and go with it.
Okay.
Gigi's moved back in 1989. People before we start, but people hear about all these missing airplanes. The ones that disappear without a trace. But here's a story of one that disappeared and then reappeared 35 years later. Oh, wow. Imagine that. 1989, a commercial airliner flew out of Germany. A commercial airliner that flew out of Germany and mysteriously disappeared in 1954 landed in Brazil with its passengers and crew reduced to skeletons.
That would have been a sight to see.
And while the officials refused to speculate on the whereabouts of this plane for the last 35 years, several respected scientists, including paranormal researcher Celso Attilo, says Santiago Airlines Flight 513 almost certainly entered a time warp and just disappeared in 1954. There's no other explanation, he told newsmen in Porto Alegre, Brazil. Flight records show that the aircraft left Aachen, West Germany on the morning of September 4th, 1954. Then vanished over the Atlantic Ocean on its way to Porto Alegre later that day. At that time, aviation authorities assumed it had crashed, but the plane mysteriously reappeared and landed in Porto Alegre on October 12th, 1989. Now, Gigi's boo. I was born during the day, but I wasn't born yesterday. And I'm just going to tell you that I'm going to have to put that story in the category of fake news.
And what was it? Little rascal said, remarkable.
Right. In the category of fake news. The point of this story is, then I'll give you the source, and I don't want to prejudice any print media, but the source of it is the Weekly World News. Okay. Now, you know, and I know, and probably the vast majority of listeners here know, that there are media, actually, that's the right way to say it. There are media that sensationalize, that take a lot of poetic license with stories. And I think people know that. And even with that in mind, in the back of your mind, you kind of, you kind of get a kick out of these stories, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like the story goes on to say, Rodrigo de Manja, a retired physics professor at Porto Alegre, said the public has a right to know everything about this plane and the government has a duty to tell them. If this plane did enter a time warp and there's evidence to prove it, the entire world should be told. Something like this could change the way we view our world and alter science as we know it. Okay, that's fair. That's a fair statement, I think. What do you think, Gigi Boo?
I think so too, but let me tell you something. I don't care what they say. If that plane had landed with none but skeletons on there, news media would have been all over that. Even if they'd have been threatened with their life.
Yeah, the Weekly World News was all over it. And in fact, I have a copy of the page that was on a super constellation aircraft. Yeah, I was telling Brent I used to have a model of that when I was a kid, 1950s airliner. Remains of 88 passengers and a 4-man crew found on the aircraft, with the dead pilot still at the controls. And, they have a picture of Dr. Otello, and, ostensibly, this could be legit if your proper discernment didn't tell you otherwise. I think that's probably an important point, because all this crap now about fake news and so forth, and which is designed to distract you from more important issues that we will cover in the documentary. However, we've lived with this stuff forever. The National Enquirer. Now, I'm not going to diss them completely, because they have been known to break some very important stories. And they were the only ones who did, who covered the articles. So I'm not going to diss them out of hand. However, I think we all know, and we see stories about 3-headed toll collectors and, that sort of thing. It's probably fun. Let's put it that way. It's a fun story. And that's certainly has been true, and it's probably not going to change. And that, courtesy of our freedom of the press, which is an important thing. And, while the press is free to say what they will, you are free to believe it or not. So, Gigi's book, I think you have some other stories that might
I've got one. One more.
A little more credible than this one.
I like this one, and I kind of believe this one more than any of them I've read. This takes place in England, in Felling, England, and it's first appeared in the Newcastle Journal, which was published on June the 9th, 1964. And it was some strange events going on at Lean Lane Farm. And approximately at 5:30 p.m., a 14-year-old boy named David Wilson claimed to have seen about a half a dozen dwarf-like creatures who stood within 20 meters of him on a haystack. They were 2 feet high, dressed in green, and with their hands like lit electric bulbs, running around the haystack and digging down into it if they were looking for something. And it went on to say that other children in the sector, in that area, also claimed to have seen these humanoids. One girl claimed to have sighted a silvery disc-shaped object about the size of a car, taking off with a spinning motion and giving off an orange glow. Another said that she had seen the dwarf's leader, and he was dressed in black, carried a baton with pink stripes on it. Yet another girl claimed to have witnessed a small man sitting on top of a barn. Another group of kids said that they had seen a tiny alien riding around the place on the back of a cow. Interestingly, about a month later, in July, an article was published by Liverpool Echo with the headline, "Little Folk in Flying Saucers." According to the reporters, scores of excited youngsters had invaded their offices on 10th of July, babbling about seeing a strange object in the sky, which changed color, and its lights were the ones that changed from red to silver, and it was moving slow at first, then it went real fast. While others told of having seen leprechauns, which had presumably come out of the spaceships. They all said they were about 20 centimeters tall, wore red and green tunics and knee breeches, and talked with a strong Irish accent. Nobody seemed to believe these children. Let me tell you something. One thing I have learned about children are open. I think children are more in touch with their spiritual side because they've not been tainted with the world yet. And in our folklore, we have the little people. So I don't doubt for a minute these children didn't see these. Were they little green men from Mars? Who knows? Were they midgets? Who knows? Were they dwarfs? Who knows? But I do believe that these children saw something. Now, could it be what comes to my mind of Opie on Andy Griffin when he came in and told his daddy that he knew a man that lived in the trees? And Andy just told him he was telling a story. They couldn't find him. And it happened to be a telephone operator, not operator, a repairman. And he was going up poles and going from tree to tree. And back then, I guess that's the way they did things. So I'm saying, yes, these kids saw something. Like I said, I don't know what it is. You can say that it was the little people. You can say it was angels. You can say whatever you want to say. But I truly believe that children are innocent. Now, could they have given a little more elaborate detail? Maybe so. They could have embellished a little bit. But what child is going to tell something like a man sitting on a cow riding around in the pasture, and describe their clothes? Most all of them had it right, and somebody said, oh, these kids got together. They got together, and this is how they did things. I don't think so. I don't think so. They said that they talked with a strong Irish accent. Hey, I got some Irish roots. Leprechauns are really real. I don't care what anybody says. Brownies and fairies and leprechauns are all real. And I don't like to see people not believe children unless it's something maybe that could be detrimental to somebody. Then you have to really get some experts in to check that out. But what bothered me is they said that since only children claimed to witness these events, they considered the stories to be a hoax. What does that tell you? Children aren't to be trusted. Children aren't, they're not believable. Of course they are. They're very believable. And yes, they saw this. And I don't care if they get mad at me for saying it or not, but I do. I really believe. They said that they called them sometime the Diddy Men. Said, I don't know. That's something that I'll have to research. I didn't have time to look that up, but Diddy Men. So we'll just wait and see. But it's strange to me that since they passed it off, these children, this was in 1964, and these children are grown now and older. I really wish somebody would go to them and see if they told the same story that they told years ago. And I'll bet your bottom dollar it's going to be the same. I really do. I think we should all listen to children a little bit more. And we all should listen to our higher power. Whatever you conceive God to be, or whatever your God will be. Listen to that higher power. I do a lot of charity work, and I don't tell people this at all because I don't want anybody to think I'm tooting my horn. But I have a gift, and that gift is sewing, and I sew really well. And there are a lot of children that are in need, very much in need. I collect coats. Anybody that's got coats that don't want coats for children, I get them. And I get up, I wash them, I get them clean. And then at the beginning of the school year, the first cold snap we have, I check with the schools to see if any child doesn't have a coat. Now, people tell me all the time, why do you do that? they got mom and daddies, and them mom and daddies is low down. Those babies can't help that mom and daddy's low down. Those babies are not low down. So we do coats. Gary's helped me cut out stuff to make clothes and put in laundromats and things. One thing that I kind of want to stress is I was cutting out stuff, and I had some beautiful cloth. To me, it was just gorgeous. It was cotton, but it was floral, and it had pale green and yellow and white flowers on it. Very, very pretty. And I had picked up some little tops from the dollar bin at like Salvation Army or Goodwill, whatever. And I had brought them home and washed them and made sure that there's no tears or anything in it. And so kept going to get some things out, just some cloth, and I'd get that flowered cloth down, and I'd say, I just don't want to cut this cloth. I really don't want to use my cloth. I really don't. I wanted to use it for something else. I wanted to make some pretty pillow slips out of it. And I put it up, and finally that nudge got so strong. Good for you, Hal. I'm glad you do. I got the cloth down, and I just sat down and I cut it. And a lot of times, instead of cutting cloth, if I'm going to do a skirt, I'll just tear it. Then I'll sew it to make it the length. And I made a skirt, and I kept seeing this child, a little girl, about 8 or 9 years old. And I kept saying, if this is what you want me to do, I'm going to do it, but please don't let me do it grudgingly. Let me give it with my heart full. And I had made a lot of skirts and things and taken them over, and this lady was in the laundromat. And I always tell people when I bring something in, if your children can use this or if you can use it, please take it. The only thing I ask them is don't profit off of it. Don't sell it or anything like that. And this lady was washing a bucket load of clothes. I'm telling you, it was humongous. And I told her, I said, if you can use any of this, please get it. Please take it. And there were several families in there. And that lady went over, and the first thing she picked up was that floral yellow skirt and the little yellow top with a lace collar that I had bought. And she said, my little girl can wear this. Oh, my gosh. And she just kept, oh, how wonderful, how wonderful. And she turned around and looked at me, and she said, I had to make the decision today whether I was going to wash clothes so my family would have clean clothes for the next week, or if I was going to take the money and buy my little girl a dress for Easter. And she said, and I don't have to. You brought one in. Okay, I listened to the Spirit. And like I said, whatever you want to call it, that gut feeling, that inner voice you hear, the Spirit of God speaking to you, whatever your God is, follow it. I gather up hats and mittens and stuff, and we give food away too. We might find a sale. We try to share with people that we know, and that's just something we can all do. You'd be surprised at the lives that you can touch if you do it, and it's usually children, and they're so thankful. Parents, not all parents are bad. Not all parents are low down. It's a hard time. A lot of people are going through hard times. And if you've got any kind of talent and you can do what the legal term is pro bono, do it for somebody, because you will be blessed. And I came out and got in the car and cried because little girl had a pretty dress to wear to church, and her mother had clean clothes for the rest of her children. Life is so hard for people now. I'm hoping that that's going to change. And be sure to smile at people. I know I can be out, and there's so many negative people in the world. I just can't stand it. And I'll smile at somebody and I'll say, have a blessed day. Have a good day. And I pulled up somewhere where was I getting my oil changed. And I said, thank y'all so much. I appreciate this, what you're doing. And the man looked at me funny. He said, but you're paying us. And I said, I might be. But I thank you that you're here, that you can do this for me, because this is something that I couldn't do. And I also think at the drugstore, every time I get my medicine, I go through the drive-through. Those people are cussed constantly. And I say to them, I thank you for what you do today. Thank you. Thank you so much. Now, let me tell you another little story. I just wanted to know how many worked in the pharmacy because they worked some mean hours, 12 hours, 12-hour shifts. And so I took some beautiful kitchen towels that I have, linen towels, and I just put a generic flower on it, something that somebody could use. And when I went to get the medicine, I just folded them and I put them in there and I said, give everybody in here one of these. And these are for me because I want to tell you how much I appreciate all the hard work you do and everything. Let me tell you something. Those people have never forgot my name. As many people as come through, they've never forgot my name. I'd pull up and they'll say, hey, Brennan, how are you today? And I'll say, I'm fine. How are y'all? Y'all having a good day? Well, we're getting by. And they'll tell you how much they appreciate what you do. Show kindness. Show more grace than you've been shown. That's one of my main mottos. Show more grace to others than you've been shown. And you'll see that life really does go better. It's a better life. Yeah. And I'm done, Gary. You take it up from there.
Yeah. And you're absolutely right. I mean, a lot of people talk about this. In fact, we used to talk about it on our old shows on Prepper Podcast. Was about creating community. And that's where we began. And over the years, we were convinced by different techniques, we were convinced to become more of a centralized society. And as the Soviets discovered, that collectivist stuff really doesn't work all that well. And I think we're discovering as well. So going back to our roots, if you will, being more locally minded, is probably what just might save a lot of us out of all this mess. And it brings a Socrates quote to mind, actually, that the real secret to change is to focus all your energy not on fighting the old, but on building the new. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I think that's exactly the direction we need to go. And I think Adrian's here. Say hey to Adrian.
Hi, Adrian. One other thing that Gary and I want to do this coming Christmas is to make up some little crafts. Not expensive, but just little crafts. And we're going to do it on the front porch for the neighborhood kids. You got to be 12 and under. We're not going to go older than 12 and under. And price everything where these kids can afford them. And $1, $2. Every child that I've ever known wants something to give mom and daddy for Christmas. And sometimes they don't have anything. And we're going to call it Mistletoe Marketplace. And that's what we're working on all this winter and this summer, to do one next year as soon as school's out for the Christmas break. I didn't mean to interrupt you, Gary.
No, you're okay. And guess what that promotes? That promotes self-responsibility, doesn't it?
Does.
I mean, how can a young person grow up feeling responsible if everything that they think that they would like to have or like to give as a gift is so doggone expensive that it can't be afforded.
Mm-hmm.
So what better way to just take that small step? Everything's just a series of small steps. And, as long as they can take those initial steps, perhaps they'll head off in the right direction. Have a little clip here that's rather topical to all this. And since we're coming up on about 3 minutes left, let's go ahead and play that. And we'll be back right after.
It is every kid's worst nightmare, and 6-year-old Jaden Hayes has lived it twice. First, he lost his dad when he was 4. Then last month, his mom died unexpectedly in her sleep.
I tried to get her away. Couldn't.
Jaden is understandably heartbroken.
Anybody can die. Just anybody.
But there's another side to his grief. A side he first made public a few weeks ago when he told his aunt and now guardian, Barbara DeCola, that he was sick and tired of seeing everyone sad all the time. And he had a plan to fix it.
And that was the beginning of it. That's where the adventure began.
Jaden asked his Aunt Barbara to buy a bunch of little toys and bring them here to downtown Savannah, Georgia, near where he lives. So he could then
Want me to have it?
give them away.
Thank you, man.
What is it you're doing?
Well, I'm trying to make people smile. Rubber duckies, dinosaurs.
Because those are the things that make people smile.
Yeah.
And what happens to their face? Really? Really.
See that man right there?
Jaden targets people who aren't already smiling and then turns their day around.
You made me smile.
He's gone out on 4 different occasions now, and he's always successful.
It's to make you smile.
Even if sometimes he doesn't get exactly the reaction he was hoping for. It is just so overwhelming to some people that a 6-year-old orphan would give away a toy, expecting nothing in return, except a smile. Of course, he is paid handsomely in hugs. And his aunt says these reactions have done wonders for Jaden.
It's like sheer joy came out of this child. And the more people that he made smile, the more this light shone.
Jaden says that's mostly true.
But I'm still sad that my mom died.
I bet you are. This is by no means a fix. But in the smiles he's made so far, nearly 500 at last count, Jaden has clearly found a purpose.
I'm counting on it to beat 33,000.
33,000? That's a pretty big goal.
Mm-hmm.
You think you can make that goal?
I think I can.
I think he just did. Steve Hartman on the road in Savannah, Georgia.
There's a good example. Change sometimes comes in very small packages.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, anything else, GT's Boo, before we hit the switch here?
No, just want to tell everybody that we love you big to our heart, and be sure to take the road less traveled. It's much more interesting.
Yep, you're right. And I hope to see you next week. And same bat time, same bat station. RealLibertyMedia.com. The road less travel. Thanks for listening, and take care.